Good morning, and welcome to the 2021 Annual President's Address. I'm Jack Martin, Interim Associate Vice President for Communications. Before I introduce Faculty Senate Chair Chris Laws, I want to note that this event was originally slated to be held in person and also live streamed. Due to staffing and operational considerations, including the fact that yesterday was the date when the state vaccine mandate for employees took effect, last week it was determined that we could not organize an in-person event under the present circumstances in as open and inclusive of a manner as in the past. We are therefore holding the address as a live stream only event. I also want to note that due to unexpected staffing shortages, we regret that we will not be able to offer live American Sign Language interpretation during the event. The live event will be closed captioned, and ASL interpretation will be provided for the recorded version of this event, which you can find at uw.edu/president/address after the event. We will be taking questions, which you can send to pres.uw@uw.edu. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Chair of the Faculty Senate and Teaching Professor of Astronomy, Chris Laws.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Laws, and I am a teaching professor in the Department of Astronomy here on the UW Seattle campus. And I am deeply honored to be here today. And while we are speaking in a virtual space, I am deeply honored and happy to be and thrilled to be here in this physical space present on our beautiful campus. The many absences of the past year have only made my heart grow fonder for the moments that we share here, the joyful noise of students in conversation, the smiling eyes of our colleagues, our friends, even the cool breezes and gray skies that are teasing the winter to come. This year, I'm also honored to be chair of the Faculty Senate, a central institution in our system of shared governance here at UW. And I am very, very happy in that role to be able to introduce to you today my close and invaluable partner in that work, our university's president, Annemarie Cauce. My connections with both the Senate and Annemarie go back many years now. I still recall vividly my first encounters with her during her tenure as a provost, when she would regularly provide reports and comments to those of us in the Senate. Her engagement and thoughtfulness, the way she centered her identity not only as a faculty member and administrator, but as a member of the university community writ large, spoke volumes to me. As a new, very junior faculty member, in a job title that many saw at the time as exclusionary, Annemarie's presence and passion was welcoming, encouraging, and empowering. And I began to see clearly how the faculty of the University of Washington were genuinely impacting the course of the university itself. How we all could play central roles in imagining and crafting the change we wanted to see in the many overlapping worlds that we moved through. Over the last several years, I've been fortunate to see many of those changes happen firsthand. Changes in how we value and celebrate the many faculty like myself who focus primarily on the teaching mission of our university. Changes in how we pursue and promote a more diverse and equitable body of faculty, students, and staff. Changes in the very nature of our tri-campus system as our colleagues at Tacoma and Bothell have extended the reach of the University of Washington far across the Puget Sound and beyond. And of course, the many changes resulting from the COVID crisis, which have impacted some of the bedrock principles of our academy. In-person instruction, remote instruction, the safety and well-being of our community, our relationship to the state whose flagship we represent. Annemarie will speak today of the many challenges we've faced over the past year and the considerable work that we have in front of us as we look to not simply restore our university, but to move our entire community and world forward into a more equitable and diverse and, at its heart, more compassionate and understanding space. On behalf of the Faculty Senate, I can say unequivocally that we stand ready to be strong partners, the strong partners that such good work demands. And my experiences suggest clearly to me that together we will move the UW forward, led by lights of empathy and openness, of collaboration and collegiality. And I'll say it again, compassion. Through her words, I hope we all find inspiration to carry this work forward and to see that the path ahead of us is in fact a good path, that there is joy and goodness even amongst the real pain and continuing conflicts we face, that our journey can be, should be, and will be made together. I am certainly happy to be here together today on this path with my friend and colleague, fellow traveler Anna Mari, and to share with you all in the audience this moment of anticipation and reflection. With no further ado, I will now turn this conversation over to her. Please join me in welcoming the President of the University of Washington, Professor of Psychology, Anna Mari Cauce.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. I want to begin by acknowledging the Coast Salish peoples of this land that I stand on, which touches the shared waters of all the tribes and bands of the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. I also acknowledge and honor the tribal nations across Washington state and the many indigenous peoples from across the country who live and work in the Puget Sound and across the state. Thank you for joining me today to reflect upon our shared vision and mission as we return to campus life. And a special shout out to all the regents who are watching, appointed by the governor to steward our great university and to make sure that we honor our mission of teaching, research, and service to promote and preserve the public good. I also want to welcome our new chancellors, Kristen Esterberg at UW Bothell and Sheila Edwards-Lang at UW Tacoma, and all our faculty and students, whether this is your true first year or your first year on one of our campus. And of course, welcome to all of you that are returning. It's been lonely without you. Thanks for tuning in. When I gave my annual address last year, we'd been working under pandemic restrictions for more than 6 months. It was a frightening and uncertain time. Our understanding of how the virus spread was limited. Remember how we waited hours or days before we touched delivery packages? But vaccinations were on the horizon, and we thought that would be that. We simply couldn't fathom the years-long process this would become, or the magnitude of the losses we would experience. Those losses have been breathtaking. Nearly 7 million across the world have died, including more than 700,000 here in the United States. And here in Washington, which has one of the lowest death rates in the nation, we've lost more than 8,000 of our families, friends, and neighbors. And even those who have been comparatively lucky over the year, avoiding serious illness, lost ones, or economic hardships, we've missed births, weddings, graduations. We've almost all lost sleep and spent months separated from loved ones near and far. Anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues are on the rise for everyone. No one has been unscathed. Our experiences working and learning remotely have varied. Some of us found it isolating. Some struggled mightily with internet access or finding a good spot to study or work. Some struggled to teach or take classes online while supervising children that were also taking classes online. Some even enjoyed having more time with family members or Zooming with our pets on our laps. Or maybe it was all of the above. For most of us, it was a very mixed bag, with very significant hardships and some unexpected reckonings, and yes, silver linings too. But let's not forget, some never went online or remote, caring for community members in our hospitals and clinics, making sure that students in our residence halls were fed and cared for, continuing to conduct important COVID-related research in their labs, and keeping the grounds and facilities clean and safe. We owe them a special debt of gratitude. But whatever our experiencing, whatever we experienced, returning to campus is not without its share of anxiety. COVID is still with us, but we are in a different place than 18 months ago. We know how to protect ourselves and minimize risk through enhanced ventilation and air filters, well-fitting multi-layer masks. We have effective and accessible vaccines that not only greatly reduce our risk of contracting COVID, but for those without serious underlying health conditions, the risk of serious illness or needing to be hospitalized is extremely small. And new research even suggests that the vaccinated may be considerably less likely to pass the virus on to others when they do get it. Yes, COVID is still here, but we are not helpless. Anyone who wants to be on our campuses has easy, no-cost access to a vaccine. And I'm proud to say that of the more than 50,000 students who have reported, 97% are fully vaccinated. And under state requirements, every UW employee is also required to be vaccinated or to have an approved exemption for medical reasons or sincere religious belief. And as of yesterday, those who have not complied are on unpaid leave or have been dismissed. But we very much hope they will get vaccinated and remain or return to the UW. That would be the preferred outcome for us and for them. Overall, more than 98% of UW personnel are now fully vaccinated. That's one of the best rates in the country. Given this and all the other safety precautions, our public health experts are confident that we're minimizing our risks as we come to grips with the reality that this virus may wax and wane over the next several years. And as of today, we have fewer faculty, staff, and students who've tested positive for COVID this fall than at this time last year when we were fully remote. The Husky coronavirus testing positivity rate over the last 7 days was 0.8%. Let me repeat that, 0.8%. And it has dropped steadily since classes started. Our protocols are working. You are doing a great job, but we must remain vigilant, especially as cold and flu season arrive and outdoor events become less possible. But what might prove just as challenging as overcoming the virus itself is reestablishing, or better yet, creating new norms of culture and communication that have been so strained in the disembodied on-screen world that was our main source of interaction outside of our more homogeneous pods or home environment. Establishing new norms, is it a fist bump or an elbow bump? It's going to take time and patience with ourselves and with each other. Change is hard, even when it's good change, but we can make it easier when we approach each other with kindness and respect, empathy and compassion. There is a lot to be concerned about. So, don't forget to vote. But remember that the compassion and kindness that my colleague Chris was talking about has to begin with ourselves. You may be feeling the weight of things that didn't get done, the research that didn't get completed, as our labs were shut down, as we spent time providing care to our family or children, as we continue to deal with the grief from those that we have lost, as well as very legitimate fears about the state of the world, not only due to COVID, but because of systemic racism, climate change, the plight of the homeless, the fragile state of the democracy, of our democracy, or all of the above. Oh, did I mention supply chain disruptions? As I said, there's a lot to be concerned about. But if you've skipped a beat, lost a step, even if you tripped and fell, it's understandable. Give yourself a break. I was talking to a student last week, and he was really distressed because he didn't know yet. He was a junior, and he still didn't know what he was going to major in. But I reminded him he'd only been in person for 2 quarters. So maybe it would take him longer to figure it out. And you know what? Beating himself up wasn't going to help things. Sometimes we just have to take a moment, take a breath, and give ourselves permission to slow down, to pace ourselves, to breathe. This is important for all of us to remember, but it especially applies to our students. So many of them are an age where they're making choices that will affect the rest of their lives, and that's a heavy burden to bear. It's important to be there for them as they discover and define their passions and paths, even if it does take a little longer. We can all contribute to creating an environment conducive to helping them and ourselves feel more grounded and secure. As Megan Kennedy, director of the UW Resilience Lab, recently asked, how can we take responsibility for creating a culture of well-being across all folks who create our community? In our journey back towards the things that make our campus joyous and special, it will take energy from all of us to make that happen. The stresses and, yes, the trauma of the last 18 months, it's not going to disappear overnight. But all the vaccines, masks, and air filters in the world won't matter if we don't work in tandem to recreate cultural norms grounded in compassion, empathy, and care. We must reconnect to our own sense of purpose and work towards shared goals within which our individual goals are embedded. The pursuit of happiness may be enshrined in our Constitution, but as Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl reminds us, neither happiness nor success can be directly pursued. They ensue or follow as a result of dedication to a cause greater than oneself. And that's what our great university's public mission is all about. Look, I'm not saying that we can overlook our anxiety and pain. It's real. It's ongoing. But I urge us to also remember and take pride in how that pandemic has clearly shown when we are faced with a challenge, we meet it courageously. For every single scary or tragic headline over the past year and a half, there's also been a story of inspiring courage, wisdom, and ingenuity, often with a UW connection. The incredible range of knowledge, expertise, determination, and purpose that the University of Washington has brought to the table has saved lives. It's offered reassurance, and it's kept us moving forward. From the very start, UW expertise and a drive to serve the public were at the vanguard of the COVID response. It was the Seattle Flu Study, a partnership between the UW, Fred Hutch, and Seattle Children's, that identified what was the very first documented U.S. case of community transmission. And that early work enabled our state and region to mobilize quickly, sounding the alarm nationwide that the virus had gotten foothold in the U.S. And across our region, the UW stood up testing sites in underserved neighborhoods where health inequities are most persistent. The UW Virology Lab quickly began testing samples, making it possible to track and slow the spread. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, IHME, created tools to model the trajectory, projecting how fast the virus would spread and teaching us all the importance of flattening the curve. UW researchers sequenced the virus's genome as early as March of 2020 so that we could trace its movements throughout the population. News consumers around the globe heard expert UW voices providing guidance and credible information. Our own amazing tri-campus UW Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases came together at least twice weekly to help our own campus navigate the perils of COVID. Thank you so much for your work. And in our hospital COVID wards, UW healthcare providers worked heroically to save every patient possible. And when medicine could do nothing more, they held the hands of the ones who couldn't be saved. And they continue to do so, including for patients sent to us from other parts of the Northwest who can't access the quality care that they can receive here. Meanwhile, the UW became the first major university in the nation to switch to remote learning. Over the course of a single weekend, our incredible faculty pivoted to teach remotely. Faculty, instructors, and teaching assistants, not only did you continue to teach and mentor in your fields of expertise, so many of you also helped your students through this very jarring transition, extending flexibility, understanding, and empathy, even as you juggled your own burdens. The fact that our university continued to deliver on its core mission of serving students will forever be a credit to you. Thank you. We had teachers like Assistant Professor of Human-Centered Design and Engineering, Nadia Peak. She teaches digital fabrication, which normally involves holding class in a makerspace with a 3D printer. When learning went remote, Nadia developed a whole new curriculum that helps students master computer-aided design and 3D printing skills from their homes. Or like Professor of Comparative Religion, Jim Wellman, whose course called A Life Worth Living had extra resonance during these difficult times. Jim's students learn about how different aspects of religious beliefs give meaning to life while exploring how to cultivate a sense of purpose. As one student wrote in their class evaluation, amidst a time of national crisis, with the backdrop of a pandemic and George Floyd's murder, this class has been a source of hope that has grounded me in the values I want to stick with in my life. These are just two of countless stories that have emerged over the last year of educators who moved mountains to be there for their students. To learn more, just read the bios of last year's Distinguished Teaching Award winners, like Professor Tedeschi Gurmai, who teaches electrical engineering at Bothell. In his nomination, one of his students who recently graduated with his BS in electrical engineering wrote, "As a full-time and international student living halfway across the globe from families and loved ones, I felt alone, sad, and overwhelmed by financial stressors that would come of my father's stroke. When my grades inevitably plummeted, he took time to talk, listen, understand, and relate to me on a personal level, and help me find the courage to persevere in difficult times." Our students and our faculty are remarkable. And when they get together, they are truly, truly awesome. And that same willing spirit of determination and adaptability has also been a hallmark of our staff. Thousands of you packed up your desks and turned your kitchen tables and bedrooms into home offices. You quickly skilled up on new technology, and incredibly, the day-to-day operations of this massive organization not only got done, but continued to set the bar for excellence. Like Nedrulani Mayolo Logatala in the Center for Equity and Inclusion at UW-Tacoma. She coordinates UW-Tacoma's food pantry, and as the pandemic picked up speed, she moved swiftly to ensure that they remained accessible. Last spring, the pantry served more than 300 students and their families, distributing over 1,800 pounds of food. Throughout the pandemic, I've been inspired by our community's resilience and determination to honor and expand how we deliver on our public mission by putting people first. I'm confident that in the weeks and months ahead, this spirit of purpose and mission, grace and compassion, will continue to define our approach to creating a new normal, an equi-recovery, and that strengthens our bonds as a community. Because our path forward must redress the growing inequity in our country. This requires a recognition that the pandemic weighed disproportionately on the people and communities with the least privilege, those who were already suffering economic instability and the daily indignities and fear caused by structural racism. They are the people and communities threatened by attacks on their voting rights and on their very bodies. They are the ones at greatest risk when cities flood from natural disasters. It's traumas piled on traumas. The impact of the digital divide hit students from those communities most severely. Almost 50% of first-generation students reported having limited access to technology, and 30% reported limited access to the internet. For these students, being back in the classroom is more than a matter of preference. The University of Washington, like all institutions, must reckon with our past and our present, the part that we play in sustaining systemic racism and inequity. It's incumbent on us to honestly examine our systems, practices, and culture to understand how they reproduce and amplify privilege, and then to act. And we are taking actions that matter. It matters that with the full support of our faculty, we made the SAT and ACT optional for admission, and not because it was forced on us by COVID. It is a permanent change that was already underway before the pandemic hit. Because the best predictors of success in college are much more holistic, especially in these days when the proliferation of expensive test prep has turned tests originally meant to level the playing field into ones that instead magnify it. It matters that we're reimagining, yes, the very complex and fraught topic of campus safety. We recognize that for many BIPOC members of the community, and for others as well, the sight of an armed officer may not make them feel better, may not make them feel safer. So we're working with UWPD and others from around our campus to create solutions that maximize campus safety and a sense of security for everyone. We recognize that an armed responder is not always the most needed or the most helpful. And we're in the process of increasing the number of unarmed responders, including those with behavioral health and social work training. It's part of a broader effort to develop a more holistic approach to safety and security calls that prioritize fitting the response to the need, and that acknowledges that the structures we have created to ensure safety have not done so in an equitable fashion. This is evident not only in who is most apt to be a victim of police violence, as an IHME study has so clearly shown, but also on who's most apt to be incarcerated. This is why Dr. Ben Danielson, UW alumnus, physician, and advocate for equitable health care, is developing a program with seed funding from the Bezos Family Foundation to provide meaningful alternatives to youth incarceration. It matters that we're working with our faculty senate to broaden the undergraduate diversity requirement. Without a fuller understanding and appreciation of our history, literatures, and practices from perspectives that represent a full range of human experience, how can we ever hope to prepare a new generation of leaders to tackle the problems that face our vast, diverse world? Over the last 5 years, we have increased underrepresented faculty by 27%. And we expect that when we tally this year's hiring numbers, that trend will not only continue, but accelerate. I say this not to congratulate ourselves. Believe me, I know there is a lot more work to be done. But I want to signal the seriousness of our commitment to a richly diverse community of faculty, staff, and students who know that they belong here. In that spirit, Professor of Sociology Alexis Harris, together with the backing and support of Provost Richards, has launched the Faculty Development Program to help forge the networks and sense of belonging that make talented faculty not only want to come, but to stay here. And it was absolutely thrilling to meet some of those faculty at a reception just a few weeks ago. They're dynamite. It also matters that we provide support to our students holistically, supporting their academic progress and their emotional and mental well-being, because they are interrelated. Direct services in the form of counselors are an important part of that, and we've hired more on-site counselors. We're also providing 24/7 access to remote counseling. And we know that counseling must be culturally and linguistically competent. Our staff includes counselors with fluency in 6 languages, because the language you work and learn in might not be the language that you use when you talk about more intimate concerns. I still sometimes dream in Spanish. Students, if you need help, ask for it. There are mental health resources and care available. The Resilience Lab and the Center for Child and Family Wellbeing is offering Be Real, a 6-week program that promotes college students' well-being by helping them to develop cognitive behavior and coping skills. And we have tools and programs for instructors to help support whole student well-being. Just last Friday, I attended the groundbreaking for a new behavioral health teaching facility at UW Medical Center Northwest, made possible by state investment. Thank you, Governor Inslee, and all our legislative champions. And the nonprofit Balmer Group has augmented these new investments in supporting the development of the workforce needed to expand treatment for mental and behavioral health in Washington, which is so sorely needed. The pace of change takes longer than most of us would prefer, but with commitment and persistence and partnerships, it can happen. Research has documented the strong and for decades seemingly unshakable stigma associated with having experienced trauma, being a victim of discrimination or abuse, or seeking out mental health services. But it is changing. I know that some have suggested that the reason I've been open about the traumas I experienced during my student years, witnessing my brother's murder at the hands of the KKK, or having had an initial graduate advisor who was a harasser and worse. That I've talked about this, they say, to gain sympathy, or to blunt the fact that I am now in a position of privilege and power, which I am well aware of. Truth is, it took me almost 40 years to talk openly about either outside of safe spaces. And what gave me the courage was both my own personal journey of healing and changing attitudes in our community. And what made it necessary was that in my role launching the UW's Race and Equity Initiative and serving on the leadership board of the National Academy of Sciences Action Collaborative for the Prevention of Sexual Harassment, it just felt fake and totally inauthentic to talk about those who had been victimized as them when it was us. Truth is, some of us, and this is especially the case for BIPOC, women, and or LGBTQ plus faculty and staff, for some of us, we went into higher education to make it a better place for the next generation of students like us. And many of us are doing research on topics informed by our life circumstances. But when we say that, our work is sometimes still critiqued for lacking objectivity, or it's derided for being me-search instead of real research. Change takes time, especially if you want it to be lasting. Change takes time because it requires changing attitudes and changing structures. And our goal at the UW is to do more than burn treetops, creating lots of fire and smoke that'll blow away when the winds change. Our goal is to dig up at the roots and create structural change that will last. Small steps can leave deep imprints and create the momentum and confidence that will allow us to run and leap and eventually fly. What allowed us to so quickly turn our research into the tests, vaccines, and treatments that are saving lives was decades of public investment and faculty work on more basic research in the life and health sciences. It seemed to happen overnight, but it's been decades in the making. Change takes time. But it can happen if we commit to it and take action, sometimes large, sometimes small, and then keep on moving forward with resolve, even in the face of understandable impatience and, yes, understandable cynicism. Early this summer, during that wonderful window, after vaccinations and before the spread of the Delta variant, I traveled to Geneva to participate in the GLION conference. It's a gathering of presidents or chancellors of top universities from Europe and around the world. I was the only president representing a US university. The meetings were exhilarating and also a bit surreal. We were masked, bottles of sanitizer were everywhere, and the presidents from Asian, African, Latin American, and Canadian universities participated remotely while it was dead of the night or wee hours in the morning in their time zone. We saw firsthand the strengths and weaknesses of our digital tools. Remote participation was meaningful, but it couldn't make up for the fact that some of our very best conversations happened during coffee breaks, dinner on the veranda, or on a hike in the local Alps. Our discussions that at times were heated focused on the power and responsibility of universities. We examined data that showed that public confidence in science had grown as a result of that critical role that universities played during the pandemic. We really do deserve to take a bow and pat ourselves on the back for what we have accomplished for the world. But the pandemic-related challenges that still lie ahead, vaccine hesitancy, the contagion of mis- and disinformation, and the widening equity gap will be even more vexing because they require not only better collaboration across the academy, but better collaboration and stronger networks between the academy and the communities we serve. Changing time requires innovation and reinvention, but our purpose and mission are clear, as is the urgency underlying our need to carry it out. As I'm writing in the volume with my conference colleagues, the erosion and, yes, the fracturing of traditional diplomatic structures make global universities like ours, with their highly concentrated brain power and ready-made networks, critically important conduits for the free flow of ideas, innovation, and people. We are often better able to negotiate sensitive topics and issues than traditional channels of diplomacy. Knowledge diplomacy, which is centered in our institutions and research centers, has become a powerful force, if not the most powerful source for problem solving on a global scale. And we can rise to that challenge and produce the knowledge needed to create more and better evidence-based policy on healthcare, education, the planet-saving work of clean energy and climate change, artificial intelligence, transformation, and. But in doing so, we must take care not to replicate and reinforce existing structural inequalities. When policy deliberations are made by technocratic experts behind closed doors, rather than with the full participation of our community stakeholders, democracy is weakened. Solutions to the next set of global challenges will require more porous boundaries between universities and the rest of society, something that the beautiful open design and glass expanses of our new Burke and our new Hans Rosling Population Center, the new buildings right here on our Seattle campus, so clearly communicate. I hope you get a chance to pass by both and Visit them. They are fabulous, and they bring the community in. As does our new corridor to our campus from the U District Light Rail Station, with a welcome center we're hoping to build right at the entry point. Our Tacoma campus lies at the very heart of the city and has played a critical role in revitalizing Tacoma's downtown. And UW-Bothell, it's right at the intersection of two major highways that connect the east and west side of our region, and it's co-located with Cascadia College, and together they're revitalizing the area's wetlands and making them accessible to the public. And in May, we're slated to open a new building in the Spokane, where together with Gonzaga University, we'll be training medical, nursing, and health science students and physician's assistants who can meet the growing healthcare needs around our whole state, including those living in rural areas. Real lasting change at scale will require us to work more purposefully and deeply with our community partners and with foundations, national and international governmental and non-governmental agencies, and yes, with industry partners too. Universities like ours are best equipped to play a role as an honest broker between their at times competing interests. This is what future leadership will require of us and of our graduates. And that work must begin right here at home within our own universities and communities. Yes, we have undergone and are still enduring a profoundly traumatic event, a slow-moving disaster that unfolded day by day in ways both humane, mundane, and life-altering. The unrelenting nature of it was deeply corrosive to our individual and community well-being. Despite, maybe even because of the truly heroic work that so many did to keep honoring our public mission with purpose and persistence, we all have healing to do. The need to heal ourselves, our communities, and the systems that have created such deep inequity in the first place, it can feel overwhelming. But we share a common purpose, and together we can do this. We can do this. One day and one step at a time, we can rebuild in ways that allow us to both honor the beautiful vision of our past that's still unrealized with liberty and justice for all, and acknowledge and move beyond its mistakes, and yes, atrocities. As we chart the course ahead with so many unknowns and uncertainties, we will approach that work with compassion and grace and a sense of purpose, urgency, and resolve. It's my immense privilege, and I know it's my immense privilege, to be part of and to lead this truly, within this truly amazing community that I love with all my heart. Thank you all for the incredible contributions you have made through these tumultuous times. And thank you for pushing me too. It doesn't always feel good, but it's welcome and necessary too. The page is turning now, and together we write the new chapter. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, President Cauce. We will now go to questions from our UW community. We'll start with one that's related to a petition that's currently circulating. That petition calls for the university to designate the autumn quarter as an extraordinary circumstances quarter, and for the university to enable all UW courses to be available to remote learners as a hybrid option. How is the university addressing these demands?
Well, you know, it is an extraordinary circumstance quarter. I mean, we're all walking around with masks. We're all getting tested on a regular basis. It is an extraordinary circumstances quarter. There's no question. We don't need to put a label on it. We all know it. The primary implication of doing this, I think what's at the heart of the request, is a more lenient, satisfactory, non-satisfactory policy. In other words, that you can take a class not for a grade, but for a satisfactory, not satisfactory. Right now, our Faculty Council on Academic Standards is the one that will make that recommendation to me. And they are considering legislation to extend the deadline for choosing satisfactory, no satisfactory, to the last day of the quarter. The current deadline is week 7. I very much support this change. So does our provost. I want to say that students already, I want to remind them that they already have the ability to drop courses from previous quarters. And I also want students to really know, I mean, I know that, that sometimes people are a little nervous, is how someone else, when I apply for graduate school, how someone else going to read a transcript with several satisfactories on it or dropped courses on it. Truth is, everyone is dealing with these extraordinary circumstances, and everyone is aware of it. So please do use these options if they make the most sense for you. In terms of hybrid learning, I think that what students are talking about primarily in my conversations with them is they want every class to not only have, people in the seats in the classes, but also the class to be taped and to have students be able to participate remotely. We all got pretty used to remote participation during the last 18 months, but it's very different when everyone is remote than this half and half. Now, students choose the UW because of our extraordinary faculty. That is what draws them here. And I feel very strongly that we have to trust their decisions on what is the best way to teach their classes. Some are doing hybrid instructions. Others have decided that that isn't the best thing for their class. And I think that it's up to them to make that decision. I know that one of the things that students have called for is that we, meaning the president and provost, make resources available to faculty so that, let's say, an extra TA or an undergraduate student to help them do this. Truth is that those resources are available, but as we talked about earlier, there are real issues with labor shortages and getting people who can do that. So, this might be something that we might talk about more as a long-term goal. Hiring TAs has been difficult to support technology. I also want to say that we also have given more support to disabilities resource offices, but again, they haven't been able to hire as quickly as they have positions available. So we are working hard on this. I want to assure students that faculty in any year has to have clear policies on how to deal with student absences. And this year they may have more absences than others. We do not want you coming to class if you have symptoms. Stay home and talk to your instructor. That's how we've kept the positivity rate so low. And so they will have policies for how to deal with students that are absent. So we'll continue to work on this together, but no, I know that some people have asked me to, basically demand that all instructors teach in a hybrid mode, and I think we have to leave that decision up to our faculty and provide them resources when we can.
Another question, Decriminalize Seattle and the Black Student Union are leading calls for the university to abolish the University of Washington Police Department. How does the university respond to this demand?
Yeah, first of all, I want to acknowledge, I found out yesterday that they were going to have a presence outside of the intellectual house where I was supposed to speak. And I want them to know that I am happy to meet with them and we can set up a time to meet. This was not arranged so as not to meet up with them. I've met them they've been at other events, and I'm happy to meet with them, and we can find a time to do that. As I said, it's a fraught issue, and more and more we're thinking about it holistically in terms of campus safety, not narrowly policing. But I think that there is no question that on an urban campus like ours, in fact, on every campus that I know of, there has to be access to some armed police. We have choices. Early on, what students were calling for, what a number of students were calling for, DCRIM, BSU, was for SPD to remove itself and only to have UWPD. Now it seems a little bit less clear. Should it be SPD instead of this has been kind of evolving over time. Again, the bottom line is that another option that's been talked about is, should we have an armed security force that's not police? I can tell you, I did some research on that a while ago, and there are more problems and more incidences of violence when you don't have trained police officers. The training of police officers is very intensive. There's no question that we need reform. We need to look at the culture within our police departments. There's no question that we need work, but there's also having no access to armed police is not an option. It's not an option on any campus. And I personally do think, although I am open to having this discussion, I think we're better off with our own police force than basically contracting it out to SPD. And if we were going to do that, it would take time. It would not be something that we could do overnight anyways. So I want to say I appreciate where the students and faculty and citizens involved in DCRIM, I appreciate the issues that they are bringing up. There are very real issues that need to be addressed and that need to be fixed. I just think abolition is not the answer, but there is, I think, a good middle ground that we can get to, or maybe not even quite at the middle, but there needs to be some. I think students will realize this year, compared to years past, that they will see more unarmed responders.
I want to go to a question we received during the broadcast about wages and inflation. Food, rent, fuel, and other prices have soared in the last year, but UW wages and salaries have not kept up. What is the UW doing to increase pay for its personnel?
Absolutely. We have, we are undergoing a very, the pandemic-related consequences continue to come. I watch the news, and there are certainly some that say this is temporary inflation and not long-term inflation. It's a little less clear what it is. We do have a request at Olympia, all the four-year public colleges do, that will allow us to raise wages for our employees. But again, it's a balancing act between when we talk about inflation, we also have to talk about tuition, and it's a complicated set of issues, but we're very aware of the fact that that people are being really stressed and stretched.
I want to go to a question from a faculty member here. As a faculty member who meets with students in my office, I'm concerned that unvaccinated students will not have an incentive to become vaccinated until winter quarter, given that a winter registration hold is the only repercussion for not meeting the requirement. Why was the decision made to not enforce the vaccination mandate until winter quarter?
Yeah, first of all, I want to repeat that at this point, we have 97% of the students who have responded, and that's more than 50,000 students. So the vast majority of our students have responded, and 97% of them are vaccinated. We actually expect the percentage to go higher when we get the final number. So we are a highly vaccinated campus. I think there are lots of incentives for students to be vaccinated, first and foremost for their own health and the health of close family members. That is the main reason, to protect yourself and to protect the people that you love and that you're closest to. But there also are a host of other things. In this city now, if you want to go to an event at the Meany Theater, if you want to, go into restaurants downtown, if you want to go to a sporting event, more and more, many of our own student activities are requiring students to show their vaccination cards. So the incentives to be vaccinated are huge. I think the issue about winter quarter is that's when we are able to enact, you cannot register.
We're coming up here on the hour, but I want to make sure we get a few more questions in. This one is on faculty and staff hiring. What are your plans to hire and retain historically underrepresented faculty and staff, specifically Black, Latinx, and Indigenous people?
Yes, that has been a high priority for us for a while, and I really do think that we've really ramped it up. Some of you may remember when I was interim president, I launched the Race and Equity Initiative in 2015 and said that this would be a priority. Not just faculty who are those groups, although that is representation matters, but also we want all our faculty to be culturally sensitive and able to speak to and teach well to a broad diversity of students. Like I say, I'm really pleased that, in fact, since 2015, since the hiring season of 2016, we have 27% increase. It's not enough, but it is in the right direction. And like I say, I think this year we will see an escalation. We really, really worked hard at it. I think that our 3 campuses are great campuses to work in. For the first time ever, we have 3 women heading them up, 1 Latina, 1 Black. If you look at the composition of our boards of deans and chancellors, when leadership becomes more diverse, that also tends to attract more diversity in the faculty. So I can assure you this is a top priority for us, and we will continue to work at it. We can't rest.
We received several questions about Senate Bill 8 in Texas and any actions the university would take on that. Will the University of Washington take any steps to address the passage of SB 8 in Texas, which dramatically restricts abortion access, such as limiting travel or refusing to do business with the state?
Well, I think that right now, for those of you that are following the news, at one moment it seems to be in operation, then the court shut it down, then it was back up again, and now there's another court challenge. So I think that right now we want to let the courts, we want to let that unfold. We have had times when our state has decided that they are going to limit access, in which case we absolutely comply. I also know that our professional organizations have sometimes made decisions, and these can be very powerful because, for example, when my conference, the American Psychological Association, we're talking about 20,000 students, and it's great for the tourism of whatever city they go to. So I think that we'll let those channels work its way through and decide what we're going to do, and we'll watch and wait.
We'll conclude with...
I want to make clear, I think it is a bill that is, I want to be very, very clear, I am totally opposed to the bill, and I'm very glad that we are living in a state where that is unimaginable.
We'll conclude with a couple of questions back in terms of the coronavirus response. The first one being, we've received a number of questions related to long lines for food, shortages, and also limited availability of services like dining hours and library hours. How is the UW addressing these shortages and wait times?
There is no question. This is an issue not just at the UW, but at every university and every institution across the country. The other day when I was walking to the light rail opening, I passed by Schultz's, which I like very much, And, the person who was, sweeping was, in fact, the manager of, the owner, not just the manager, the owner of Schultz's. And, I kind of teased him about his new job, and he said, I usually have 14 staff members. I'm down to 7, and they cook better than I do. I mean, that those of us that are here, we talk a lot about faculty and staff. Staff includes administrators. We're all working double, triple time. Everybody is working, I think, and I'm a little concerned about that. But we can't unilaterally deal with shortages of supplies that are not there across the country. And we are doing our best to hire. But like I say, the shortages are real, and we're trying to be as ingenious as we can, but I can't promise you that we're going to solve this overnight. We're all dealing with this across our country.
For the last question, we received several emails regarding the campus mask mandates. And so to conclude, do you have any indications of when or under what circumstances the indoor mask mandates and the outdoor mandates for events will end?
Well, the first thing that I can say is the mask mandates are working. I mean, we are absolutely doing great at our university, and the mask mandate is a huge part of it. Thank you to all our students in particular. We worried about what might happen if, and you folks have been amazing. Not just indoors, but it's really fun. I walk outdoors, and when students are walking in pairs or whatever, outside they might, but when we have groups and activities, they're wearing their masks too, and that's, really, really important. I think we have to take a wait-and-see attitude. COVID is still here. I mean, you look at the rates on our campus, and you think it's gone, but they're not what they should be. We still have a lot of work to do in King County. We have a lot of work to do in Washington State. We have a lot of work to do in the United States. And I think right now, I mean, I'm not trying to say that, that the masks are always comfortable, but you can get some comfortable ones, and hey, they're kind of stylish and cool. And I think we should stick with them until we really feel we're in a very different phase than we are now. And we look to our experts. I think that, these days, we're all reading the papers and we're all experts. I look to the people in public health and epidemiology and the folks in our medical school, and we'll follow their advice, as well as looking to the state that's really played. I mean, if you look at how our state is doing, we really have, we're bottom 5 in a good way. We're bottom 5 in terms of death rates from COVID in the country, and it's because we've been doing things right.
Thank you, President Cauce. And that concludes the 2021 Annual President's Address. If you missed any part of the event, you can find a replay at uw.edu/president/address. That's also where a version with ASL interpretation will be posted when it's available. Thank you for watching. Please stay safe and go Huskies.
Go Dogs.